Hey everyone, this is Coach Ruin. This is my first real YouTube video, so I appreciate you guys checking out my channel. I want to spend some time talking about the map Split. I want to go over some game plans, some comp ideas, and I kind of want to intertwine that with the NRG MIBR game we saw yesterday, talk about how they're kind of innovating on what we already know about the map. So if you like what you see, please leave a comment, let me know what you want to see next, and I hope you enjoy the video. Okay, so before I get too far into this, I want to talk about each team's comp. So on the left side we have NRG, and on the right side we have MIBR. Now, these comps are fairly identical. You've got your Space Creators and Rays, you've got your Smoke Agents in Astra, you've got your Lurker and Sentinel as Killjoy, you've got your Initiator, your primary Initiator as Sky, and then NRG opts for a secondary Initiator in Breach, where MIBR opts for a secondary controller in Viper. But she kind of acts as a sentinel on this map. She's kind of more of a self-sufficient lurk, like Sight Anchor, like more of an active participant than a typical second controller would be. So I would say that looking at these two comps, that NRG's comp is much more offense-sided, and MIBR's comp is much more defense-sided. Being that it's a defense-sided map, you normally don't need to overstack defense super hard as far as your comp choice. Normally it's better to sort of like, if the map is defense sided, you might need some extra help on offense. So running an extra Initiator makes more sense to me, but I think both comps are perfectly viable and both within what I would consider the meta of this map. All right, so to get started, I figure I would talk about what are the basic game plans that each side kind of wants to implement to have the best success and how those are used today. So typically the attack side is going to be fighting a lot for mid control, and they want to also establish this A line as best they can, and you want to create a connection between A heaven and middle. And this connection basically allows you to manipulate the rotations between B heaven and A heaven, where you have the faster rotation path. So it's easier for the attackers to kind of go back through middle and hit up here than it is for the defenders to then run back and do the same. That's why establishing this is so important. Now there's a couple ways to go about doing this. You can do this by the traditional way, I would say, is by having, either Astra, Viper, setting up a Viper wall like this, where you're kind of cutting off vision of heaven as well as the cross. You could do this by pulling back a Astra Star, allowing you to cross that way. Some people will do the Astra or the Viper smoke and then pulse this smoke throughout the round. That way you don't really know exactly when we've crossed. But either way, as long as you have something there, you can do Cypher Cages as well. As long as you have something there to allow you to cross. In this game, it was mostly the Viper wall for MIBR and then Astra smokes for NRG. Okay. Now, so understanding that that's what the attack wants to do, how is the defense normally going to stop this? In what I would call the old meta, you typically see a setup that looks a lot like this. So blue dots represent defensive positions. So typically you have one anchoring B, you've got two in heaven, you've got one in rope room, and then one A anchor. And then what you're doing with this is you're trying to draw this guy over towards A and punishing him in middle for doing so. So a typical plan would be to smoke this off, take up rope, and then at the same time you're doing that, you're hitting up here with your Viper Orb or whatever. And then essentially you're crunching these players from both sides. That's sort of what the goal is of the offense. Now, if the defense rotates and puts enough pressure to stop you from successfully splitting A, that means that they don't have enough people left at B to really stop you from going back. Because you have the faster rotation path, you're able to beat them back to B most of the time. Like, it may not look so bad if you just look at it as stairs back to spawn. This doesn't look like that bad, but the reality is this stair position is going to be neutralized by utility most of the time. It's not enough to just sit on the stairs, at least in the beginning. We're normally going to be able to bypass you and get right to the site anchor and then overwhelm them, take site control, and then plant the bomb. Now, as a result of that, what we're seeing out of both teams really is a much heavier focus on playing light on mid, heavy on A, and then light on B. I feel like before, people were way more likely to be comfortable retaking A, and they didn't want to retake B, which is why you were often in that 3B setup, like 2 heaven, 1 site. But nowadays, it seems like it's the opposite. Now people would much rather fight for A, hold A, and contest it, and then give up middle and give up B. And retaking B, both teams had a lot of success doing this. And most of the time at A, it came down to like a 1-on-1 or like a 1-on-2, which like that's not really a retake at that point. It's more just a post-plant, situation. It's not really the same as like a 5 versus 5. The general idea for retaking A is typically that you would have. So here, let me clean up these dots really quick. So in a 5-man retake of A, typically you would expect some sort of pressure on screen, maybe 1 or 2 people, while the rest of you are coming down the ramp, clearing all this out, and then hitting like this. So they're clearing your close angles, you clear here, then you guys can come out, and they can come out, and you hit the site this way. This almost never happened. At least it only happened a few times, and it was the round was already basically decided. It was always like a 2v2 at this point, and it never really happened the way it used to happen all the time. This used to be a common 5v5 retake often. Now what we're seeing is people are fighting for the site, and rather than, giving it up, we're instead giving up B. Now, as far as retaking B goes, we used to never want to do that. We used to fight for B constantly and not want to retake it because it's a tough site to retake. But now what we're seeing is essentially what you're doing is you're ignoring spawn, maybe 1 spawn, and then 1 coming rope room, and then the other 3 are all coming rafter. And you're trying to sort of flood out this way, establish, under heaven, establish rafter, and then late come spawn and sort of push out one way. Like maybe have 1 person hold left side while everyone else is pushing right. So here, even on the first round of the game, we're even seeing that approach, the new approach sort of take effect. We're sort of lurking middle with Killjoy. We've got our duelist and initiator taking A. This sort of sells the fact that this is a full A hit. The fact that the attackers aren't taking mid control tells the defense that, hey, this is probably an A hit, or otherwise they would be working for mid control. Killjoy is able to work up with an Astro Smoke, able to create that connection that I talked about between rope and middle. They come through. Viper even tries to sell through the wall a little bit here. She ducks through and tries to create some extra sound cues to maybe sell it, and NRG doesn't bite. They read this perfectly. They end up staying in position at B, so the fake ends up not really working, and they sort of run into the stack and end up losing out the trades. NRG ends up taking this round because they accurately read the situation. So here, a couple rounds later, we see sort of the same idea. They're willing to cross here without the wall up because they're looking for a pick back. They're already down a man. And here Victor's in a pretty tough spot. He's kind of caught in the middle of both the A push and the middle push, and he doesn't really have adequate support to handle both. So he essentially tries to pick a side and ends up guessing wrong, unfortunately, and gives up his life. Now this creates that connection that I was talking about. Now, I think the difference here is they're not expecting NRG to have 3 people at A, like including Victor. Now, essentially, there's 3 people, so they don't have quite as strong of an advantage here as they were expecting to have. So they end up using the Killjoy ult. This allows the rest of the rotations to kind of come in because they realize they don't want to go in without it. And these positions on defense are just so strong that Crashes is able to get a multi-frag here and kind of lock down the round, even from what would have been considered like a strong advantage for the offense. Alright, now in this clip you can kind of see what I'm talking about with the playing 3A. This is not typically what you would see on this map previously. They're still doing their... Now it's more typical agents like Viper and Killjoy on Lurk. This is more standard, I would say, with Raze and Sky ready to take mid control. Now, NRG responds here by trying to reflank. They flash through the Viper wall and try to fight. And unfortunately, I don't think they realize that the MIBR players are already across. They start to clear this out and end up giving up picks on both sides. They try to retake Heaven and retake Ramp at the same time, end up giving up 2 picks at the same time. Now, I feel like MIBR's mid-round choice here was a little strange. They get both picks at the bomb site. They even get the 3rd kill at the bomb site. Instead of running the bomb through rope, through Heaven to A, they sort of push down the stairs here and end up in a... Like, this is a tough spot to be in with 18 seconds. There's a lot that could have gone wrong there. They end up, luckily getting that 4th kill when I feel like they really didn't need to. This didn't have to be nearly as tight. Although, for them being up, 3 kills, this could have been easily lost just on time. Now, what we see in this round is one of the defense's main ways of sort of stopping this A pressure is by pushing through yourself and just being willing to take the fight. Now, normally you don't want to give up your strong defensive position on this map, so going aggressive as defense is a little bit risky, but here I feel like the benefit is, worth it. They end up getting the pick, but MIBR responds perfectly. They immediately push right up middle with all 4, and like I said, that stair position is not really ideal for stopping the actual site take. It's more of a paper tiger. You kind of get smoked off, you get mollied, and then you're waiting for the retake at this point. Now, this retake, though, is basically perfect from NRG. They gather up on the stairs. They've got their rope player ready to go. Once that nade comes out, that initiates the flood. Rope comes out, Artist gets the first kill, and the offensive post plant kind of falls right apart. JZZ has to peek out, try to make anything happen, and, from a 5-on-4 to 5-on-none in just a couple of seconds. Now, in this round, we have NRG on the attack side, and they notably have 2 initiators and no Viper. So they're much more about attacking quickly and using overwhelming util to take map control and quickly gain space. As a result, they don't have a Viper who can kind of hold their flank, and as you can see, Raze is pushed right through to spawn. Raze, was communicated to Raze that, hey, they're putting heavy pressure mid, maybe you can get a clear opening here at A. And this is sort of, again, the countermeasure to that A lurk. If you're not going to put pressure there, or it's fake pressure, you might get found out, and you might give the defense an opportunity to kind of corral you all in like this. Here comes the Raze flank, gets a free kill, drops the bomb, throws a nade right on their feet. Now NRG knows pretty much that they can't fall back from this position. They pretty much have to continue forward, but they also know that Raze being there tells them that the site is most likely stacked. So even though they can't go back, they know they have to go forward here into the stack, and that's probably their most likely chance of winning the round. Sky tries to get into an advanced position in rafters. Unfortunately, it doesn't really change the tide of the fight. MIBR comes out on top of these trades and are able to secure the round. So this is another example of that B retake I was talking about. Notice that NRG have a little bit worse guns, their buy is a little bit worse, so they're going to want to try to push out and take more map control to make the post plan a little bit easier on themselves. So their plan immediately is to fight for spawn. They end up chasing Astro away, but otherwise this looks exactly the same as what NRG did. They group up everyone in Heaven, they have one coming late rope, and then initially they would have had one spawn. They sort of clear hell, now they're starting to flood, they get a 2-for-1, it gets traded back, but this is generally favoring the defense. It seems like most of the time teams are favoring this fight as opposed to giving up A. Okay, well that concludes all the rounds I wanted to show you guys today. I hope you enjoyed my analysis, and I hope you got some value out of what I had to say. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.